What would you do if you were destined to bump into 5 cute strangers on your way to school and accidentally stole the underwear of 2 of them? And at the end of the day, each girl confesses their love to you, and they all move into your house and invade your personal space to compete to be your wife. Would you be able to keep your cool in this new crazy harem situation? Or would you let your lower body do the thinking? Well, that's exactly the situation Asahi finds himself in after a fortune teller on TV tells him he'll have 5 special encounters today. On his way to school, Asahi accidentally bumps into a girl who lands on top of him, and although this doesn't kill him, it definitely gives him a heavenly sight. But Asahi reassures the flustered girl that he didn't see anything. She apologizes for bumping into him and quickly runs off, leaving behind a mysterious white piece of cloth that Asahi picks up. He then arrives at his train and closes his eyes to relax for a moment, but when he opens them up again, he sees that a beautiful girl is sitting right next to him, despite the train being completely empty. Confused and overwhelmed by the girl falling asleep on his shoulder, Asahi tries to leave, but this causes both of them to fall down together. He then finds himself with both hands firmly enjoying her plot cushions, and narrowly manages to escape this awkward situation with his life intact. Afterwards, Asahi comes across a staircase and begins to worry that he'll have another strange encounter, but quickly brushes off these thoughts. Suddenly, a girl trips and falls down the staircase and lands right where I wish my face could be right now. The girl is shocked by Asahi's indecency, but when he tries to explain that it's not what it looks like, she ignores him and instead chooses to play whack-a-mole with his manhood before running away. As Asahi continues his journey to school, yet another girl rushes onto the scene and accuses him of being a pervert who hacked the cleaning robot so that it would steal her bra. Before he can even reply, however, the robot malfunctions again and mistakes the girl for trash and starts dragging her away. Afterwards, Asahi is understandably exhausted by all these encounters, but he then witnesses a boy being humped by a dog and makes the wise decision to simply ignore it and walk away. But the dog switches targets and pounces onto Asahi instead, unwillingly saving the boy, who then thanks Asahi for his help before running away in tears and leaving Asahi behind. All these encounters have made Asahi late for school, so when he finally arrives, he's forced to sneak into the classroom on all fours. Suddenly, Asahi realizes that every single person he's encountered this morning is a new transfer student in his class, and one of them is his new homeroom teacher. Asahi immediately attempts to conceal his identity by making a silly face, in hopes that they won't recognize him. However, the girls immediately realize that he's the pervert they encountered that very morning, and Asahi eats a couple hands to the face. Later that day, Asahi's friend, Yoshio, explains that he's gathered information about all the new girls and introduces each one of them to Asahi. The corner girl is Aoi, and her special skills are cooking and sewing. The train girl is Mongfa, a young teacher from China. The staircase girl is Karen, a transfer student from Germany and a popular model. The bra girl is Amelia, a transfer student from America. And last but not least, the dog boy is Ilya, a shy transfer student from Bulgaria. Later that day, Asahi arrives at the cafeteria too late and can't get anything to eat, but he's thankfully not too hungry since he's already eaten a bunch of hands today. When Asahi sees that Karen was also too late to get any food, he offers her a banana, which makes Karen realize that that banana was what was in Asahi's pocket earlier. From then on, Asahi spends the rest of the day clearing the misunderstandings one by one between him and the girls. As class ends and Asahi gets ready to put this entire exhausting day behind him, a letter falls out of his desk, urging him to meet behind the school. He thinks back to the fortune teller and realizes that this is the final encounter that was predicted. When he arrives at the meeting location, he sees Aoi, and Asahi is happy to finally get the chance to return her white cloth. But as the wind blows and lifts up her skirt, he realizes that he's unknowingly been holding onto her panties this entire time. But it's fine cause Japanese women are pixelated down there. Meanwhile, Aoi confidently and clearly says, "I love you." But Asahi is so taken aback by what he just saw that he misunderstands her words and believes that she's talking about her love for going commando. When Aoi then sees her panties in a tree and realizes that Asahi had them this whole time, she becomes incredibly embarrassed and runs away. On his way back home, Asahi surprisingly runs into Ilya, who confesses his love for him. But before he really has a chance to process this, Mongfa arrives and drags Asahi away with her, much to Ilya's disappointment. She tells him there's no time to explain and immediately kisses his neck while mysterious men run past them. She then confesses her love to Asahi and urges him to see her as a woman rather than his teacher. He's tempted to give in to her but restrains himself and runs away, something I personally would have never been able to do. As he continues his journey home after school, Karin spots him and suddenly jumps off a bridge in a wedding dress. Asahi simply keeps walking away faster and faster while pretending not to know the crazy girl chasing after him. When Karin then asks Asahi to go to a love hotel with him before they get married, he surprisingly agrees. But once there, he tells her to close her eyes while he gets ready and just walks away while she patiently waits for him. Moments later, Asahi runs into Emilia wearing a disguise, pretending to be someone gaining signatures for a petition. But when Asahi starts signing it, he quickly realizes that it's actually a marriage registration form. Emilia's plan fails, and her bra is then stolen again by the cleaning robot. When Asahi finally arrives home after this exhausting day, he sees all 5 girls obediently waiting there for him. He closes the door in their faces as he believes that he must have the wrong house, but the girls insist that he's at the right place. It turns out that Asahi's father has prepared 5 brides for him, and that all of these wife candidates will live with him from now on. Asahi reluctantly agrees to let the girls stay with him, but regrets it pretty quickly as they all cling to him, and Asahi realizes that his peaceful everyday life is coming to an end. At dinner, they all try to feed him, and when he goes to take a bath, Karin tries to sneak in, so he kicks her out. But Emilia is already in the bath waiting for him by hiding underwater. Desperate to find a place for some peace and quiet, Asahi heads to his room. But just as he lets his guard down and relaxes on his bed, he sees Mongfa on the ceiling. Angered, Asahi holds a meeting with all of his potential brides and tells them that they have to go home. But when they explain that they have nowhere else to go, Asahi decides that he'll be the one to leave instead. He begins to aimlessly walk around town with no real plan, but Ioi finds him pretty quickly. She apologizes for her and the girls' behavior and explains that the girls have been waiting forever to meet him, so it's understandable that they were excited and acting a bit crazy. She manages to convince Asahi to return home, and he arrives just as the girls were packing their things to leave, so he tells them that they can stay after all, so long as they behave themselves. The next day, Asahi wakes up only to find Emilia underneath his blanket, trying to stamp the marriage registration form with his toe for some reason. Later that day, several bridal candidates win a group hot spring trip, and excitedly invite Asahi to come with them. But despite everyone being excited, Ilia is anxious about the trip, because in reality, Ilia is truly a girl who disguises herself as a boy to fulfill her father's dying wish. When they arrive at the hot spring inn, all the girls want to get a private room with Asahi, but he decides that it's best for him to bunk with Ilia. Believing that they're both dudes, Asahi starts acting more relaxed around Ilia and begins treating her the same way he would his male friends. Ilia is flustered by this, but is forced to endure it so she doesn't reveal her true identity. Later on, Asahi enters the men's baths and finds Ilia there already, who immediately panics and trips while trying to run away. When Ilia wakes up moments later, she sees Asahi by her side, and realizes that her true identity has been exposed. Asahi apologizes for his previous offensive behaviors, and Ilia reveals why she must pretend to be a boy. In response, Asahi hugs her gently and encourages her to be her true self. At that moment, Ilia remembers the sight of a young Asahi, but is unsure where this memory came from. In the following days, Ilia gains the courage to confess that she's actually a girl, and changes her name to Irina as she decides to openly act as a girl from now on. Sometime later, it's revealed that Mongfa is a gentle and friendly teacher that's very popular among students. But when she's at home, she's a completely different person, who loves to get drunk and attempt to seduce Asahi in various ways. On one particular night, however, when Asahi heads back to his room, he sees a strange man hiding in his bed, who is actually Mongfa's nemesis. The man takes Asahi to a mansion and strips him completely to lure Mongfa by using him as bait. This proves effective, as Mongfa quickly rushes to rescue him. Fortunately, she's powerful enough to defeat the waves of bad guys who attempt to stop her. After the fight, Mongfa immediately flees with Asahi, but when she notices that he's injured, she rips off her skirt to dress his wound, while also lamenting her life. You see, Mongfa had been trained to kill ever since she was a child, and gradually grew tired of this life. And after becoming a teacher, she had finally found a reason to go on living. Not wanting Asahi to be killed because of her, she grabs a gun and points it at him, and forces him to run away. Her nemesis then suddenly appears and reveals that he had transformed his whole body into a machine, just so he could defeat her. He attacks Mongfa with all his strength and she quickly begins losing the fight. Just as she's about to be finished off, however, Asahi returns to protect her. And upon gazing at Asahi's heroic figure, Mongfa remembers that a young Asahi had protected her in a similar fashion. Meanwhile, Asahi throws a bottle of lubricant at Mongfa's nemesis and then attacks him with an electric rod, giving Mongfa a chance to finish him off with one fatal blow. Afterwards, Mongfa thanks Asahi for coming back for her and hugs him tightly. When they return home, the girls are shocked to find the two intimately passed out together on the couch. Shortly after this incident, Asahi finds himself attacked by a robot that he's never seen before. But before any harm can come to him, a beautiful magic girl appears and unleashes her magic to destroy the robot before flying away. The next day at school, Asahi tries to convince Yoshio of the magical girl he saw, but he of course doesn't believe him. Karin then interrupts their conversation to embrace Asahi. Suddenly, a huge floating machine appears outside the window and begins attacking. Thankfully, Asahi is saved by Mongfa, but his friend Yoshio is injured. Asahi then realizes that Karin is missing and heads out to search for her, only to find her transforming into the magical girl he saw the night before with a floating rabbit next to her. She tells Asahi that she doesn't have time to explain and asks him to touch her body so that she can gain magical power. And despite Asahi's flustered refusal, the rabbit pushes him into her and Karin gains magical energy from this. She then flies out to fight the floating machine, but runs out of energy too quickly and falls weakly into Asahi's arms. After hiding with Karin, Asahi learns from the rabbit's explanations that the robots in the sky destroyed its planet, but the rabbit managed to escape to Earth and, in order to get revenge, invited Karin to accept its powers and become a magical girl. The rabbit further explains that Karin can only get magical energy from someone she loves. The rabbit then takes Asahi and Karin to his special car and leaves them alone. Karin begins to undress, thinking that sleeping with Asahi is the fastest way to get her energy back. Asahi quickly stops this, however, as he does not believe that Karin is in love with him. Despite this, Karin pushes him down and begins taking off his clothes. Afterwards, Asahi manages to escape Karin's lustful grasp and instructs the rabbit to flee with Karin while he distracts the robots to cover their retreat. At that moment, Karin truly falls in love with Asahi and her body becomes filled with magical energy, transforming her into her final form. Immediately after, she begins retaliating against the floating machine. But despite her best effort, it still proves too powerful for her. Suddenly, Asahi hugs her to give her even more energy, and together they unleash a powerful father-son Kamehameha. After the day is saved and Karin returns to normal, Asahi anxiously asks her whether she's hurt, and at that moment, she remembers a young Asahi caring for her and embarrassingly runs away from him. Sometime later, Asahi's friend Yoshio invites him and the girls to the beach, but before they leave, Yoshio has an accident. Despite this, they head to the beach as planned, but Asahi finds it weird that none of the girls seem to care about Yoshio's condition. After the girls get changed and play in the ocean for a while, they come across a sign that says swimsuits are prohibited on the beach. The girls don't resist this strange rule since there's only Asahi there with them, and willingly let him admire their figures for the rest of the day. That lucky bastard. When they finally decide to go home, Asahi can't seem to find any of the girls and thinks they must have gone home ahead of him. But when he arrives home, he only sees Aoi. He tries to ask her about the other girls, only to find that he can't seem to remember any of their names at all. He then voices his concerns about this to Aoi, but she simply doesn't respond to him and takes him for a walk in the nearby woods where they see a huge cherry blossom tree under which Aoi passionately confesses her love to Asahi. She then pushes him to the ground and says that the most important thing now is that her and Asahi can be alone together. But just as she's about to kiss him, Asahi suddenly remembers the other girls and excitedly speaks out their names. Upon hearing this, Aoi becomes disappointed and turns into a cloud of cherry blossoms. But after the cherry blossoms disperse, a girl named Izawa appears in front of Asahi, who claims to want to be with him forever but can't and warns him never to return to this place. Immediately after, Asahi is surrounded by code, as if he's trapped in a digital world. And when he wakes up the next morning, he has no recollection of what happened the previous day, but notices that none of the girls are home. To make matters worse, at school, no one remembers him, nor the girls, and Asahi doesn't remember his classmates either. Realizing that something is very wrong, Asahi rushes out in a panic to look for the girls, only to be stopped by a strange woman named Feynman, who claims to be Yoshio. She then takes Asahi to her lab and reveals to him that she had recently conducted a special experiment to let artificial intelligence feel human emotions, and that Asahi was one of the volunteers who agreed to participate in this. He had been living in the VR world for months, and the girls around him were all artificial intelligences. She further explains that when the girls first met Asahi, they didn't know what love was, so they behaved erratically. But as they started getting along with him, the girls gradually developed human emotions. On the day they went to the beach, however, the researchers' connection to the VR world was blocked somehow, and Asahi was forcibly sent back to the real world. In turn, Feynman was kicked out of her lab because of the failed experiment. She then reveals that, 3 years ago, a mysterious doctor made the first lifelike artificial intelligence in an attempt to preserve his terminally ill daughter's consciousness, and the girls who lived with Asahi were all derived from this doctor's creation. At that moment, Asahi's past memories come flooding back to him, and he remembers that the doctor's daughter was actually Izawa, his childhood sweetheart. After this, Asahi says goodbye to Feynman and runs to Izawa's grave, where he mourns the loss of his first love. Meanwhile, Aoi's image begins appearing on screens across town as she begins to take control of the world's technology, quickly throwing modern civilization into chaos. Desperate, Feynman approaches Asahi in the hope that he would return to the VR world to stop Aoi, but he hesitates as he remembers that Izawa warned him never to return to the VR world. But when he remembers the girls, he realizes that although they met in a VR world, his feelings for them are real. Meanwhile, Feynman receives a call from her old colleague and learns that the director of her old research institute has decided to eradicate all artificial intelligence from the world. Not wanting to lose his precious wives if all artificial intelligences are destroyed, Asahi agrees to re-enter the VR world, and after his consciousness plunges into the darkness, Asahi finds himself reconnected with the girls, who reveal that they had sensed in advance everything that is happening now and secretly hid from Aoi within the virtual world. It then turns out that in order to help Asahi, Feynman had been watching over him as Yoshio and the rabbit, which Feynman controls once more. She then talks to the girls and learns from their conversations that the director of the research institute has launched a program that controls all the robots in the VR world, in order to have them eradicate all artificial intelligences, and that if Asahi is caught by them, his brain is going to be severely damaged. As they make their way through the virtual world, the group encounters many humanoid robots, so Feynman transforms all the girls into magical girls. The girls then become powerful enough to fight off the robots. But seeing this, Asahi realizes that Feynman had orchestrated each encounter that he had with the girls, and a disappointed Asahi begins to believe that nothing he experienced in the VR world was real, including the feelings the girls felt for him, since Feynman played a hand in all of it. Meanwhile, the girls are quickly outnumbered by the waves of powerful robots, and are gradually losing this seemingly never-ending fight. Suddenly, Feynman's rabbit is destroyed by the robots, and Mongfa decides to stay and fight the robots alone, so Asahi and the others can escape and reach Aoi before it's too late. She tells Asahi that when he protected her from her nemesis, he awakened some of Izawa's memories from years ago, which made Mongfa realize that her love for him was real and not manufactured by the researchers. She then kisses Asahi and pushes him away, and he grabs one of her headbands as he falls. Now alone against the army of robots, Mongfa gives every ounce of her strength to defeat them, as she reminisces about her time spent with Asahi, as well as the childhood memories that she shares with Izawa. And as Mongfa accepts her fate, she feels completely happy and satisfied with her life. When Mongfa's hairband dissipates into the air, the group realizes that she is no longer with them and burst into tears. But they have no time to grieve, as they must continue forward to find Aoi. They eventually arrive at a rooftop and are surprised to see that the entire VR world is in chaos and close to destruction. Seeing the army of robots blocking their path, Karin and Irina offer to act as bait to attract the robots' attacks, so Asahi and Amelia can go on ahead. Not wanting to argue, Asahi tells Karin and Irina to regroup with him as soon as they're done fighting, and leaves with Amelia. Shortly after, Amelia reveals to Asahi that she remembers a memory of Izawa where she had adopted a lost puppy and had taken great care of it, only for the puppy's true owner to return and take it back, making Izawa feel as though everything she had done for the puppy had been a waste. But thanks to Asahi's encouragement, Izawa was able to overcome this situation. Meanwhile, Karin and Irina also reminisce about the many memories they've made with their beloved Asahi, and they leave this world with no regrets as they sacrifice themselves to ensure that no robots can reach Asahi. At that same moment, Amelia kisses Asahi farewell before forcing him down a digital portal as she calmly stays behind to sacrifice herself for him. When he finally lands, Asahi finds himself reconnected with Aoi, who decides to explain everything to him about how Izawa's memories awakened within her, and she began to lose her mind under the influence of Izawa's overwhelming love for Asahi, so she tried to keep him by her side in an extreme way. But now, she feels the death of the other 4 girls and regrets her irrational behavior. Aoi gives up the idea of possessing Asahi, and all she wishes for now is for Asahi to feel Izawa's true feelings. She reveals that Izawa has always had a crush on Asahi and fell in love with him when he surprised her with a necklace. But just as Izawa was immersed in joy, she suddenly felt strong dizziness due to her disease. She refused to tell Asahi about this, however, as she didn't want to worry him. Izawa was then taken to a hospital where she lived in fear of death every day, and the only thing that brought her joy was when Asahi would come to visit her. And as her health worsened, Izawa would use makeup to hide her poor physical condition. However, her illness gradually became so severe that she could no longer hide it from him. By this time, Izawa had reached the end of her short-lived life, and she had only one wish left: to see the cherry blossoms with Asahi one last time, because they had promised each other that they would someday get married under a cherry blossom tree. But Izawa was already inseparable from her hospital bed at that point, and her wish could never be fulfilled. Asahi cries as he feels Izawa's despair and can't calm down for a long time, until Aoi reveals that Izawa's consciousness is still inside the VR world. With Aoi's help, Asahi enters another passage and finds Izawa waiting for him under a cherry blossom tree. He hugs her excitedly and tells her how much he's missed her. However, Izawa tells him that she hopes he can forget her because she doesn't want him to be immersed in painful memories. But Asahi is adamant that he'll never forget her, no matter how painful it may be. And for the first time, he confesses his love for Izawa. Touched by Asahi's words, Izawa can no longer restrain her repressed emotions and begins crying as she confesses that she loves him too. They suddenly find themselves underneath the cherry blossom tree where they had promised to get married and share a passionate kiss as they reminisce about the sweet memories of their pure childhood love. Izawa, now without any regrets, decides to leave so Asahi can start a new life. And after an affectionate farewell, she gradually begins to dissipate into the air, only leaving a necklace behind to remember her by. While Asahi calmly accepts her departure, knowing that she will live forever in his memories no matter what. When Asahi finally returns to the real world, everything is back to normal, and the Research Institute revokes their decision to kill all artificial intelligences. Sometime later, Feynman is appointed to be the director of the Research Institute thanks to her help in preventing a global disaster, and she continues her research on artificial intelligences. Meanwhile, Asahi has been admitted to a university and has started a new life. But on one particular day, however, he receives 4 packages sent by Feynman, and is surprised to see that Amelia, Karin, Irina, and Mongfa have been returned to him thanks to Feynman's research, who also managed to give the girls real bodies too. Asahi's chaotic home life returns to what it was in the virtual world, just as a familiar face approaches his doorstep. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the recap of this unique anime.